This little video goes with the opening of my exhibition at Kingston Liberal Synagogue to bring you some of the backstories to the work. My name is Lior Locker and I'm a mixed media artist. Travel is a big inspiration for me. Earlier this year, I went to Prague. In came the golem. It is a creature created from river mud or clay, brought to life by magic using letters in the right combination. It was created for help and protection in times of need by the community. Then, in the story, it ran amok to the point of needing to be demade. Its remains are allegedly still on the attic of the Altneuschule in Prague. That is one version of the story. Stories and poems about the limits of human creation and where it can go wrong exist elsewhere and in other cultures as well. They still excite the imagination. I'm an artist who also has a day job, like many of us. That's where I came across generative AI, where I look at things like its impact on work and learning, human AI collaboration, but my lens is quite a bit broader. At some point in spring of 2023, sitting at the same desk for both parts of my life, the desk where, when I take the laptop away, becomes my art studio, those two concepts merged and wanted to be looked at together. As a creative person, you always wish to be the first with a genius idea. So, of course, I wasn't. But please keep listening anyways. None less than Gershom Scholem, famed scholar of Jewish mysticism, saw that connection first. As Israel got its first supercomputer, he gave the inauguration speech that referenced the golem. Develop peacefully, he said. The year was 1965. I still have the same hope. This isn't a talk about AI, but it helps to understand a little bit what it is, how it works, and how I collaborated with it to create the art. So I'll give you a brief explanation. This will be super broad strokes, so please don't flood the comments with stuff like that. It's not the time and place. I use ChatGPT for creating my art. There are other providers as well. ChatGPT is what they call a large language model. It basically means you take an enormous amount of computing power and feed it with stupefying amount of data from all of the internet up until 2021. It then uses that to essentially predict which word comes next in a sentence. Given the amount of data is so large, this is actually fairly good, and the system learns as it keeps doing it. That's the bit they call machine learning. This isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and it is biased like the data we fed it with. And yes, that is a problem. ChatGPT and friends are able to approximate how a human would react, and in many ways already score better than actual humans, both for skills tests, but also, for example, in customer service. As you can imagine, this is currently being integrated into lots of different things, and the business activity is rather frenetic. There are conversations about ethics and regulations, but they are way behind the curve of a technology that grows exponentially and recreates itself in the process. In spring this year, I did an art commission for Colossive Press for one of their cartographies, and mine features the new golem. I call myself a mixed media artist, which is my excuse to bring a lot of things together, often printmaking and collage. So I was exploring the topic and figuring out what to do for the commission. I created a whole series of work playing with the golem idea, and that's the examples, some of which you will be able to see in the exhibition. I also created, obviously, the final commission, which I will link to. The final piece ended up being a liner print with writing in marker pen. The image is a silhouette of the golem towering over the skyline of London. You'll probably recognize the Shard and Tower Bridge and so on. In some versions, I also tucked a little reminder of the Altneuschule in Prague in there too. You'll recognize the vantage point if you know London a little bit. This new golem is brought to life at the bank of the Thames with zeros and ones, compared to the mystical power of the original 22 Hebrew letters. Modern day efficiency gains, you might think. In one version of the original legend, the golem is brought to life when its creator writes Emet on his forehead. That's Hebrew for truth. To then unmake the golem, one has to erase the first letter E for Met to remain, which means death. Truth versus death. The hand is at the ready, hovering but inactive. The original golem is mute. As in the legend, only humans possess the gift of speech. ChatGPT and other generative AI engines are all speech, no body, nobody, not conscious. Programmed to remind you they are a large language model before they astonish and confound you with the astuteness of their responses. Some confabulated. Truth is still a question to be resolved. There are some safeguards in place with regards to death. None of them are perfect. In spring, I spent some time chatting with ChatGPT about itself, about the golem, and about human creation and its limits. The answers vary and evolve over time, so I archived the key points they were the night I did that, and you'll find links for that. Some questions made it onto the artwork, as did some of the answers. Who am I? Why am I here? What shall I do? Where shall I stop? How will this end? Here are some of the bits generative AI had to say about the golem. The legend of the golem can teach us about the limits as humans, strengths and weaknesses, dangers of playing God. It's a cautionary tale about the hubris of humans and overstepping the boundaries. About itself. As an AI model, I do not have personal values, nor can I make judgment calls. My behavior is determined by the algorithms and programming used to create me. I don't have personal agency or the ability to act on my own beyond programming. They implemented a variety of measures to ensure I operate within legal and ethical frameworks. I do not have an inherent lifespan or predetermined end date. It depends on availability of service and infrastructure that runs programming and algorithms. In the Golem legend, its creator was a tzaddik, a righteous man, embedded in his community with decades of learning and experience in solving ethical problems. His creation outgrew him in ways he didn't anticipate, and the seemingly simple that turned out not to be simple after all when common sense and judgment aren't there. His golem was created at the scale of one. In spring 2023, generative AI was the fastest growing application ever. And with that, everyone is a creator in ways that are already impossible to keep up with. The discourse seems to belong to who shouts the loudest and who has something to sell around it on LinkedIn. The rest is largely hand-wringing, trying to play for time with something that's exponential. The golem is a legend. When they opened the attic of the Altneuschule in Prague to check, it was empty. ChatGPT and other forms of generative AI are real. Weirdly enough, we call that real, and increasingly embedded. They will change what humans do versus what technology does in ways we won't fully anticipate quite yet. And a lot of the people this will affect are not part of the conversations right now. To conclude, I'll quote Gershom Scholem again, as he concluded his speech from 1965. Develop peacefully and don't destroy the world. Shalom.